Hi, Russell and Matt. I'm interested as why you've started using your Winston Churchill voice so frequently, says George Allen in Derby. Hey, I've listened to lots of Radio 2 podcasts from the past and watched you a fair bit, but this impression, I don't think I am. Churchill will never surrender. I came down to the kitchen in the middle of the night and I took an emery board and I filed down the tip of the dog's penis. And your late father, Majesty, of an evening would file down the tip. He would take an emery board between his finger and thumb.
What is going on?
Russell Brand.
This
is Radio X.
You've just heard it. If you want to communicate to Russell, and I know him because I live in his body, then you can, using the information that you've just had. And many was the night, Majesty, in your father's reign, where he and I would make our way down the stone staircase into the kitchen. Then, taking an emery board from our back pockets, would file down the tip of the dog's penis
till it was
a cross-section of cells. That's Churchill. It's one of his...
Why'd you say that you were filing down with an emery board? What's that got to do with anything?
I like it, so to do.
Does it come from your head?
Yeah, it's come out of my head.
Did you do it?
Never. You'd never do that to a dog or any
bear
creature.
Got such an odd temperament.
And a strange-shaped penis, if you look. And the end's not flush. It's like a
that's why.
popsicle.
So this is what's going on in your brain. You've looked at it and you've thought, I could just file that down. He'd be perfect.
He's already had to have a hip operation. I don't want him back under the knife to have his winky
running away
woo.
from you with your sander.
If I were to do it, it would be with a simple emery board.
You wouldn't sit still for that. You'd need power tools.
You wouldn't use a power tool on a dog. You'd get that doesn't have the definition. You'd take the penis itself between your finger and thumb, and the emery board.
Remember?
That's not rude. It's too weird to be rude.
I myself, on long winter evenings, have been known to make my way down the winding staircase there in Balmoral with your late father, Majesty. He and I would then take an emery board from between the clefts of our buttock and scour the parlours for a stray animal, and perhaps when that animal was sufficiently aroused, take the emery board and file the tip of the penis down till it's like a stick of Brighton rock chopped off nicely, and so you can see the cells within it.
And I'm the weirdo for having a spray tan. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Suddenly I see some of what I didn't get on with. And if I may, I'll take an emery board from my men's
normal services resumed.
As you were. As you know.
As you were.
Your late father and I, Majesty, sometimes at Harvest Festival would break away from the throng, find some quiet time at the back of a teepee, and taking an emery board from my inside pocket.
Off,
oh no, you start
look
looking at your papers. G writes a bit of poem.
And if that's not enough, Majesty, your late father and I would roam the palace corridors, our spirits by this time broken by the horrors of war. On finding one of the dogs, we would corner the Hound, and against its will, on many occasions, lift up its front paws till it was stood vertically like a kind of man, and then, taking the emery board from my inside jacket pocket, would file the tip of that penis till it was completely flush like a broken branch in a storm, and I would do it again, Majesty, for Britain and for ourselves.
That's what you said.
That's right. That was my speech. Went well. The vets enjoyed it.
And the only way to conquer such a problem is with the emery board.
Why don't you
file it
slash
down?
This is Radio X.
Russell Brand.
Majesty, it was on a night just like this one that your late father and I took our men's vanity cases, popped them in our dressing gown pockets, made our way through the palace corridors to the stone-floored kitchens, where, taking one of the many dogs, we took an emery board from our kits, gripped his member between finger and thumb and filed it to entirely flush, revealing a cross-section of shells.
This is the sort of thing a strange person would say on a radio show.
On a weekly basis.
On a regular basis.
I've been looking at a £5 note and I see Churchill on there, and every time I see him I think he should be saying that to me. And why doesn't he? That's what I think.
He's on the plastic fiver.
He's on the plastic fiver. We're keeping his memory alive. We're using iconography to create a national identity, to create an erroneous narrative that may be bogus, because is there such a thing as a country really? No. And like the other ball, it's not in the Albert Hall, it's still in his abdomen, which is a cancer risk. So we've got to get that ball out. And I say to him sometimes when I'm looking at the one ball that's out, I go, come on, get the other one out.
Can't it be pulled out?
And on some winter evenings, Majesty, your late father and I took it as low as to reach into our vanity kits, take an Emery board, and file it first quite slowly. That's a section from a new tattoo I'm thinking of having pretty soon one day. I think it's still up there, mate. What about times when we were kids? Now, this is...
the littlest hobo. All of them gripped
Kids
me.
aren't calling me down the road. It's where I'll always be. Every stop I make, I'm making it...
Started too
Start too high, yeah. Can't stay for long, just turn around and I'm gone again. Maybe tomorrow I'll try and settle down. Until tomorrow, the whole world is me home.
Such a sad...
It's too deep.
Sad.
Or just one, it's like an old person where over time the trousers have
Filed it down on those winter nights, every follicle now buff and empty.
Whereas look at me and Garrett, although I'm scarred up there bad on that leg. Oh, mate.
That's cool. Oh, I remember. You were thrown through a window.
Russell Brand Radio.
X. Majesty. Your late father was, of course, a fan of royal blood that ran through his veins like thick crimson wine, and often, particularly on late autumn nights, would rise up in him, creating a fever, and fueled by this, the two of us would stalk the corridors of Hampton Court, reaching at the final moment into our back pockets where we knew snugly would be seated an Emery Board, and tracking down one of the hounds of the castle, we'd grip it by its shoulders, ignoring its yelps. Then your late father, Majesty, would hold the cur to the floor, as I would file, slowly at first and then rather aggressively, until it was filed across in a neat, visible cross-section, revealing a series of cells like larvae, and within each one a universe was revealed, Majesty. A universe like the one we inhabit now. God bless you, Mum. Many were the nights, Majesty, where your late father and I would make our way to Kettering, where the headquarters of Parcel Force were. Then bursting into the offices of Mr. Michael Fletcher, the acting duty manager, we would grip him by his hips and unbuckle his belt, and against his giggles and cries, derobe him. Then, between a finger and thumb, your late father would unveil an Emery Board and file it till it was a cross-section of revealed larvae and weeping jellies. And that is why I am the patron saint of the mentally ill. Thank you, Britain. Thank you, everybody. He, my boy Bear, got his nuts cut off.
Really? The old Emery Board. Whoa. For real.
A man is fasted into reality.
Many's the night, Majesty, that a professional veterinary surgeon...
Can I have them?
You're not keeping my...
I wear them victoriously round my neck.
Oh, you can have them as earrings.
Fluff bags.
And then your nose is like it's Dinko, and I can file down the tip.
Russell Brand Radio.
X. Majesty. Many were the long winter nights where your late father and I would scramble from the chambers of Hampton Court, making our way into the orchard, giggling as we went, tugging at the back of each other's pyjamas, already threadbare from the night's activity. And there, in the corner of Hampton Court maze, happening upon a hound, we'd grip it, first by its shoulder blades, then by the base of its spine, and producing an Emery Board, which by now I knew well to take from my vanity case, would file it down the tip till it was a cross-section of cells.
It's made me think I've got to watch what I say. And
Majesty.
oh God.
Many were the nights where your late father and I would walk the corridors of Balmoral, our eyes glinting in the moonlight, our housecoats flapping open to bare our nether regions, and once through the pantry and into the service quarters we would find the lowly curs and hounds, and gripping the most vulnerable by his flanks, pin him to the flagstone floor, and only then, when the beast abated squirming, would your late father, God rest his soul, produce from his breast pocket an Emery board, and pinching it between his finger and thumb, file aggressively at first, till a cross-section was revealed, a honeycomb of cells, each one with an individual burgeoning larvae within it. Thank you.
I know you've done something. I know you've done this because that graphic image of the cells, like a honeycomb of cells, you say that every time. That means you've got a strong image of it in your mind because you've done this. Not to a dog, but to something.
Look, all I'm saying is all reality has got cellular systems underneath it. And if you was to get a cross-section going, that is probably what you would see. Oh, it's too tall up here! It's red and white! I'm exposed! What's that? Flapping at the window! Oh, why are these shadows being cast in a 360 pattern continually? Ah, the sea, the cruel sea, the rocks, the rocks! Ah, Majesty, many was the night as we walked down that long spiral staircase. Your father giggling like a schoolgirl, no underpants on beneath his robe, and as we'd reach the bottom floor by the cruel craggy docks, he'd gather up one of the many curs slumbering there, and lifting its forepaws, exposing its belly, before producing with a swish like a samurai an Emery Board, Majesty, and filing fast at first, but then slowly, as if playing a violin like a young Nigel Kennedy, he'd whittle it, ma'am, till it was like a stick of rock, and the only thing exposed, and this is going to shock you, Majesty, was a network of cells like a honeycomb, and within each cell a larvae or egg bubbling over in glory. So maybe I will take the lighthouse.
Russell Brand.
This
is Radio X.
Nana's magic soup. Not on your Nelly. Been down that road many's the time.
Ah, Majesty, your late father and I, sometimes of a wintry evening, having supped on Nana's magic soup, would wander out into the car park of World of Leather, and then, hammering on the pane of glass, demand the attention of the duty manager regardless of the shift. Once inside, we'd grab hold of Warren Nesbitt, for that was his name, and reaching to the inside of his shirt, pinch his gland until squid ink flowed freely, Majesty, ream after ream of squid ink, discolouring the milk of life with its cloudy wonder. Then, taking his member twixt thumb and forefinger, giggling like girls, we would file down the tip of his member, revealing a cross-section, a honeycomb of cells, within each cell a watery little larvae, each one giggling like a... Yes.
When you read this back from Ofcom, you'll realise how weird it is.
Exactly.
He said, and then the presenter, the host, Mr. Brand, brackets, continued to describe a honeycomb of cells with larvae in them. This, bearing in mind that this was at 10 to 12 on a Sunday morning, hardly think that's appropriate behaviour.
I fetishised every type of food that I ate. When I eat a Malteser, I like to nibble off its little...
A Malteser, you mean?
A Malteser.
A Malteser.
I like to nibble off its little chocolate jacket till its honeycomb is all exposed, Majesty. Ah, many were the nights when I'd find myself on those flagstone floors, peeling the chocolate.
I'll eat my banana. It goes on for about 8 minutes.
No, go on. What was you going to say about me and my Maltesers? I've never seen anything like that outside of erotic content on Elephant
Bob and
Tube.
biscuits.
Okay, now we're just going to have a little advert. You'll hardly feel a thing. There'll be a little local anaesthetic. Then we're going to just pop an advert down into your skull. And after we come back, we're going to talk about the purchase of a utopian island. What could be simpler than that?
Russell Brand.
Radio X.
Majesty, I remember your late father. He and I scrambling through the cold night air, our fogged breath just before our faces, our fingertips cold as ice as we looked for lowly curs in the ground. Eventually returning to the pantry, I would grip one of the smaller hounds, Niblet, by his neck and throat, flip him onto his back, whether he wanted to or not, Majesty, and your father, reaching for his vanity case, would find a single emery board. Taking it immediately between his finger and thumb with nimble expertise, would file away at the tip, exposing a cross-section, as you know by now, surely, Majesty, if you've been listening, a honeycomb of wet cellular larvae, and each one of those larvae had a secret of the inner workings of the universe, Majesty, and it would grow into a butterfly, then it would lay its own eggs. You're listening, of course, to Russell Brand on Radio
What is the root of that?
X.
Someone emailed and said there must have been a root. So you were watching The Crown, was it? Or
Yeah, I'll tell you what the root is, if you want to break it down. It's because Winston Churchill's voice is always associated with very, very important information because he was the heartbeat of a nation in one of the defining moments of our myth.
Where's that come from?
Emery Board is what we want to know.
Yeah.
Because that's just a funny thing to say, I think, to someone. But
Where's it come? There must have been a moment you saw an Emery Board. You were fired. This is what I think. You filed an animal's.
why would anyone file down just the tip to reveal a cross-section of honeycomb?
It's too specific.
Because there's a certain, I'll tell you another little bit of information, is that people don't, there's a sort of a disorder where people don't like to see loads of circles. There's a name for it and everything. You know, like how there's weird little disorders, plucking your hair out.
Yeah.
Well, there's one where people, and my girlfriend, wife, doesn't like it. She doesn't like to see like a dense mesh of honeycombs or cells or things like that. Yeah, and I think it's because it's the ulterior realm upon which reality is based. When you talk about a graph
You
upon
think
which...
that about everything. My wife doesn't like toast. Well, I think that's because it's ulterior.
Don't like toast, you say? Perhaps that's because you know that bread is waiting to become toast, even when it's dough. It's knowing I'll be bread, then I'll be toast.
Have you seen that video?
Russell Brand.
Radio.
X.
Life. Can it get any better than this? Of course it can't.
Majesty. It's difficult at a moment like this not to reflect on the days of my youth where your late father and I, sometimes on a hunting trip in the grounds of Richmond Park, would recline for a moment against the bark of an old oak tree, feeling our skin against the coarse, rough wood. We would reflect on the challenges that we'd faced together, and for a moment's respite and joy, spying in the corner of our eyes' periphery, we'd see a lowly greyhound, thinking opportunity for coursing lies ahead. We'd approach the beast, gripping it by its all too thin ankles, twanging the tendons like the strings of a harp. We would lower the beast, then, finding the glands, thumb out the squid ink which lurks there, and only as a denouement, with your father's eyes rolling ecstatically in the back of his head like a transcended yogi, we would take an emery board from his back pocket and, gripping the member of the beast, file down very briskly and aggressively a flat surface like a stick of rock, revealing a cross-section of honeycomb within each cell, a larvae, a wet, emergent, pupile larvae, pullulating with life, Majesty.
How's your week been, Matt?
It's been all right. Just sort of
It's
getting
been
by.
all right, and it's just getting by, aren't we? Oh, thank you, darling. Now, go on. What is underneath?
Oh, yeah. What is underneath? That's a fantastic question, because when you do a cross-section, you open up any school textbook, and you look at the core of the Earth, those wonderful bands, yellow and white, right? And I go, wow, those are really great cross-section. What happens... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Cross-section. There could be, couldn't there? Is it not feasible, Mark, that within there would be a network very much like a honeycomb, and within each cell a fluid, and within each fluid a larvae, each one more symmetrical than the last, Majesty. Many were the long winter nights where your late father and I would scamper, giddy as schoolgirls, into the courtyard, our dressing gowns flailing behind us, heroic in their way, the moonlight glinting on our bare skin. We would spot one of the lowly creatures of the courtyard, a tomcat or perhaps a whippet hound, then gripping it by its thin hips, twanging the harp strings of its tendons, we would flip it onto its back, and ignoring its scrambling, would prise apart its thighs. Then your late father, Majesty, would take from his inside pocket a vanity kit. There within was an emery board. He would take it till it was completely flat, revealing the aforementioned cross-section, within which would be a honeycomb, and within each shell of the honeycomb is a larvae, and the circle of life begins again.
I think you'll come out of it a changed man.
Ah, Majesty.
If I hear that in the woods, I will hunt you down.
Many were the long nights wherein a copse, perhaps startled by the footsteps of a deer, your late father and I would sprint, casting aside the flap door to the tent, crunching across twigs, our bare feet embedded in the soil, dirt beneath our toenails, when sighting in a clearing a young hunting cur, we would scramble after it, dressing gowns wide open, then gripping the hind quarters of the whippet, flipping it on its belly like a suckling pig. Then your father, with a menacing glint in his eye, would produce from his back pocket an emery board, would file very aggressively at first, and then in a slow, melodic, almost oceanic tidal rhythm, file down a flat surface, revealing a cross-section, and within the cross-section you can see a network of honeycomb cells packed up against one another. Within some cells a clear liquid, and in others pupae larvae pullulating with life, a mathematical anomaly, drizzling clear fluid.
I will move into your tent.
All right.
Ah, Majesty. Your late father and I were fascinated by nocturnal beings, and that is why, come the witching hour, our eyes would flick open like Venetian blinds suddenly snapping to attention. We would rise bolt upright in our beds, then he and I, face to face, gripping each other's shoulders like samurai warriors before a battle, would make oaths before the moon, howling like wild men, our dressing gowns undone, our nightshirts not worn, our genitalia bare before the moonlight, not a hair on our bodies, Majesty. We would oil ourselves, keep ourselves well-groomed. We would sprint out into the woodlands, and there we would find, in an opening, some of the lowly curs and hounds of the palace. I would grip one of the lowlier beasts by its hips, and searching for the glands in its lower abdomen with the tip of my thumb, squeeze all the squid ink that had gathered there, till the squid ink bloated cutaneously beneath the skin like a bullfrog neck. Your father would chuckle and giggle and produce from his back pocket a vanity kit, and there, carefully thumbing first of all the scissors and the tweezers before selecting, wisely and nobly, with a knowing smile, the emery board, then taking it between his finger and thumb, take the member of the creature, and then taking the emery board swiftly at first and very aggressively, then slowing down into a gentle rhythm, much like this one, Majesty, scored by this. And your late father and I would gaze in wonder at the cross-section, like a split piece of Brighton rock. There, a tight-packed network of cells with a light layer of liquid, a gloss, as it were. Within some cells were larvae, and in others mere eggs, all with the same wetness, a tight-packed, glorious cross-section. Ah, what it was, Majesty, to be young.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll let you know about the job in the week.
Do you think so?
Yes.
Have I? But just between you, have I done well?
You did very well.
Thank you.
A man before you said a very similar thing, but he wasn't as handsome.
Oh, thank you. Well, I look forward to hearing from you then.
Yes.
Sorry, excuse me.
There were times when your father and I we would float.
You can hang up
not
now.
on helium, but on our own giddy gases claimed from our own digestive system, and we would let our robes billow out wide and white like floating succubi. We would walk the corridors of the palace till he and I, wrapping each other's arms about our bodies, our limbs like roots of an oak tree, wrapping round, tightening the vine, and there from the corner of the eye we'd glimpse a lowly creature, a cur of some kind, perhaps a fox cub, and your father, Tim Tom, he would stagger over to the beast, pin it down, and then producing from the back pocket of his pyjamas a vanity kit, and neatly and quickly reaching for an emery board, he would hold it between his finger and thumb, and there, first of all quickly, then eventually, rather slowly, he would file that trinket down till there was a visible cross-section. And curious we were, Majesty, to glimpse the inner truth, a cross-section of cells, and within each cell a larvae or perhaps an egg. Glazed it was, glistening wet in the moonlight.
Oscar, for God's sake! We were told you were Australia's biggest expert. Right. What are you doing in there?
Well, I wasn't told that I was going to be
Majesty, your late father and I had a keen interest in evolution. And every pancake day evening, we would slither out of our bunk beds, nude as babes, and rush out into the pantry where our grass skirts were stored. We'd fling them round our waists and then, like hula girls, sprint onto the croquet lawn, kicking up croquet hoops with the nubs of our toes, our toenails cracking in the moonlight. Then, once we spotted one of the family pets, most likely a dog, a whippet hound, underfed and moist of eye, your late father would grip him by his front forepaw, beneath which there is an ancient chamber, and take from out the cleft of his buttocks a vanity case, and I, knowing all too well what would follow, would lock eyes with my compatriot and companion, and hold the beast down by its rib cage, its undercarriage exposed to the moonlight, and with a knowing look he would take an emery board from the vanity case and pinch back the skin of the offending appendage, and then begin to file very briskly at first, most briskly, ma'am, most briskly indeed, and then slowly until a flat edge would emerge, and there within the flatness, glinting, would be a cross-section of honeycombed cells, some with a larvae within, others with a pod, possibly of mouse eggs, and we would watch as they glistened in the moonlight.
Now, where is your poem, young man?
Why can you not? Like, why are you eating a locket, but you eat it like it's a precious jewel? You put it in, suck it twice, and then hold it in your hands like a little sticky piece of amber.
Majesty, the locket contains within it that fine residue made by the noble honeybee. Your late father and I would sometimes, during the Christmas season, look for a full moon, knowing that the apples would be at their fullest and most ripe. Dew within them, residue without, would make way to the orchard, and holding open our robes at the waist, letting the universe see our wares, Orion's belt glinting and bouncing from the pelmet's surface, we would jiggle and wobble amongst the crab-apples and trees, and there, laying amidst the gnarled roots of one of those fine orchard members, we would see a lowly cur, grip it by its snout, turn its snout straight to my perineum, and ask it to fill its lungs with that fine wines that lurk there. Then your father would take a vanity case from his, in this instance, breast pocket, reaching straight for the emery board, straight past the tweezers and those scissors where the end bit curls upwards away me for safety reasons. He would get the Emery Board, Mom, and file very aggressively, making eye contact with me, a smile playing about the corner of his lips as the tip was worn away into a completely flat edge, flat as granite stone, flat as sandstone, Mom, marble. Not a single serration or disruption to the flatness. And there, within that flatness, like a stick of rock, you would see a cross-section. And within that cross-section, a tight, simultaneous, replicating network of honeycomb cells. Each cell glistening with wet moisture. And within each cell, there'd be either a larvae or an egg, Mom. Ah, what it was to be young.
And so, Lockets.
That's right.
40p from a news station.
Lockets available now, or tunes, or this one's
Or
made out of
other
honey.
things that-
Majesty, your late father and I would enjoy the spectacle of the Christmas lights, and as the illumined sky would twinkle and sparkle, the two of us would exchange a glance, knowing that the real glow was to be found elsewhere, twitching betwixt the thighs of a canine, and we'd scramble away from the crowd's majesty and make our way across the cold flagstone floor of those Victorian streets to a lowly cur couched in the corner of a courtyard, trembling with anticipation. Then your father, Majesty, would grip his tail right at the stump, and I would grip the appendage between my finger and thumb, and your father, knowing what was coming next and barely able to conceal his laughter, would produce his vanity case and take an Emery Board, and then, first quickly and then very, very slowly, file at the tip of that ancillary organ with such aggression that before long a flat surface was revealed, and within that surface cells, and within those cells larvae, and within other cells eggs, glistening in the cross-section flatness like a sweet honeycomb, Majesty. Ah.
I remember reading somewhere that 30% of people in Britain dream about the Queen. Well, what do you think of that? People are dreaming about something like this. There's some significance to it.
Majesty,
Yeah.
your late father and I used to delve into our unconscious mind and use an image system that was most coherent. In the realm of the Jungian unconscious, we were occupied by daemons, demons, and deities, and amidst them all, the lowly cur could be found in a courtyard, and your late father and I would scurry down the corridors of power, our dressing gowns flailing behind us, our bare genitalia winking in the moonlight as we approached the animals. Then he, your father, in spite of his ill health, Majesty, would grip the hound underneath its undercarriage, and holding it like a baby would present to me its underneath, and I would take an Emery Board that was in a vanity case in his front pocket and begin filing at the cur's member, at first very swiftly and slowing to eventually to a rhythmic tidal movement, till there was an exposed cross-section of cells, Majesty, and within each cell a larvae or an egg, glistening like a perfect stick of rock.
I don't think the Queen would enjoy that. Right? She's very kind.
Thank you, Robert.
But yeah, you would have seen tons of blood. Of course, it took several assistants to sew up the leg, but it all had to happen very fast, or you could bleed out. Certainly.
But once that liquid had dried, you would see surely a cross-section, a network of cells like a honeycomb, through the bone, through the arteries, a honeycomb of cells, and within each cell an egg or a larvae, a glorious cross-section. Mm-hmm.
Is that possible, Doc?
Majesty, your late father and I would throw many a banquet, but midway through those banquets we would march out from the table which had been concealing our waist-down nudity up to that point. We would scamper like crabs into a clearing in the woods, our lobster claw feet pawing at the soil, and once there, into a clearing, spotting perhaps a lowly cur or other creature of the Lord, we would grip it by its shoulders, flip it so its underneath was exposed to the shimmering moon, and then, Majesty, and only then, would your father produce from his pyjama pocket a vanity case, and within that vanity case there was an Emery board, and he would take that Emery board and file at the cur's appendage, first very quickly, then slowly, till there was a flat edge with a network of cells exposed, a cross-section like a honeycomb, and many of those cells were wet with larvae, and others seemingly empty, but a teardrop of gloop quivering within them. Ah, Majesty, such is the history of the British monarchy.